It was supposed to be just a quick weekend getaway, nothing more. I had been working crazy hours for weeks, and the idea of escaping to a quiet Airbnb tucked in a small town sounded like the perfect cure. The listing showed a cozy little place. White walls, rustic wooden beams across the ceiling, a stone fireplace, even a tiny balcony overlooking a forest. It looked harmless, almost charming in its simplicity. The host's reviews were all positive, with guests praising the cleanliness, the fast Wi-Fi, and the private, peaceful atmosphere. That phrase stuck with me, private, peaceful atmosphere. I didn't realize then how ironic it would turn out to be. I booked it without thinking twice, packed a small bag and drove up on a Friday evening, looking forward to nothing but silence, maybe a glass of wine and uninterrupted sleep. When I arrived, the place was exactly as pictured. Quaint. Inviting. I walked in, set my bag down on the couch, and immediately felt that familiar sense of relief you get when you know you can finally relax. Everything was tidy, maybe even a little too tidy. The kind of meticulous order that doesn't feel lived in, like a staged set. But I brushed it off. Hosts usually cleaned obsessively for guests. I poured myself some water, checked my phone for signal, and wandered through the rooms. There was one bedroom, a bathroom, the main living space with a small kitchen. Minimal but enough. That first night was uneventful. I made myself a simple dinner, scrolled on my phone, and fell asleep around midnight. But at some point, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, I woke up with that strange feeling of being observed. You know how sometimes your body just senses something before your brain can rationalize it? My eyes opened in the dark, and for a moment, I was sure there was someone in the room with me. But when I sat up and looked around, I saw nothing, just shadows stretching across the walls, the faint glow of the moon through the curtains. I convinced myself it was the creaking of an old house, that my overtired brain was inventing things. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and forced myself back to sleep. The next day I went out exploring. The town was small, one of those places with a diner that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years, a gas station, and a few antique shops. People were friendly but curious. They looked at me like they knew I didn't belong, which in a place that size was probably true. I got coffee, walked through the trails near the forest, and returned in the late afternoon. When I stepped inside the Airbnb, though, I noticed something subtle but unsettling. My bag wasn't where I left it. I was sure I had dropped it on the couch, but now it was on the floor beside it, as if someone had nudged it while walking by. I stood there for a long time, trying to convince myself I had just remembered wrong. Maybe I had tossed it carelessly. Maybe it slid off. Still, unease curled in my stomach. I checked the door, it was locked, same as I left it. Windows locked too. So I shook it off again. That evening, I made myself dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on the couch flipping through Netflix on the TV. That's when I noticed it. A tiny red dot blinking. My heart skipped. At first, I thought it was just some reflection, maybe from the router or a smoke detector. But when I looked closer, I realized it was coming from the corner of the room near the bookshelf. I got up, walked over, and leaned in. My chest tightened. It wasn't a reflection. It was a camera lens. A hidden camera, tucked carefully behind some fake books, angled toward the couch, and directly at the bedroom door. My hands went clammy. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind spun with questions. How long had it been recording me? Was it live? Who was watching? I felt exposed in a way I can't even explain, like my skin wasn't mine anymore. I yanked the device out from behind the books. It was small, black, almost unnoticeable if you didn't know to look. There was no brand name, no indicator of what kind it was. Just a small slot for a microSD card and the faint red light that made my stomach turn. I dropped it on the table, staring at it like it might come alive. The first thing I thought of was leaving. Just grabbing my bag, getting in my car, and driving away. But a horrible thought stopped me. If there was one camera, what if there were more? What if every inch of this place was wired with them? The shower, the bedroom, the balcony. The idea of being filmed without knowing where or how made me feel sick. I started tearing through the place. Behind the curtains, under the bed, the smoke detector in the ceiling, the vents. And the more I searched, the worse it got because I kept finding them. One in the lamp in the bedroom. One tucked near the TV in the living room. Another, unbelievably, in the bathroom vent. They were everywhere. I backed into the wall, shaking, clutching one of the devices in my hand like evidence. My thoughts were racing. I needed to call someone. The police, Airbnb, anyone. But even as I pulled out my phone, a chilling realization crept over me. If these cameras were live, then whoever set them up knew that I had found them. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what I had found. The dispatcher was calm, telling me to stay on the line, to remain in a safe spot, to wait for officers. But how could I feel safe when I was standing in the middle of a stranger's house, surrounded by hidden cameras, knowing someone had been watching every move I made? I grabbed my bag, stuffed my things inside, and told the dispatcher I wasn't staying. She urged me to lock myself in the bathroom until the police arrived, but I couldn't. Every part of my body screamed at me to leave, to get out before whoever was behind this showed up. I bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock, my heart hammering so hard I could barely hear the dispatcher's voice anymore. I ran to my car, threw my bag into the passenger seat, and peeled out of the driveway. My eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, expecting headlights to appear, expecting someone to follow. I parked at a gas station a few miles down the road, under the brightest lights I could find, and finally let myself breathe. Still on the phone, I told the dispatcher where I was. She said officers would meet me there. When they arrived, I showed them the camera I had pulled from the bookshelf. They exchanged looks, muttered to each other, and asked me to take them back to the Airbnb. I refused at first, terrified at the thought of going back, but they assured me it would be safe with them there. Back at the house, with police lights flashing outside, they swept through the place and confirmed what I already knew. Cameras. Multiple of them. All hidden in everyday objects, all pointed at places where a guest would change, shower, sleep. They collected them as evidence, bagging each one carefully. The host, of course, was nowhere to be found. His number went straight to voicemail. His profile on Airbnb was suddenly gone, as if it had never existed. That was almost worse than finding the cameras, knowing that he had vanished the moment I discovered them, like he had planned for this possibility all along. The police assured me they would investigate, but their words felt thin against the weight in my chest. Because even though I left that house, even though the cameras were gone, the damage was already done. Someone had watched me. Someone had studied me in my most private moments. And that violation doesn't just fade when the cameras are unplugged. Even now, I can't walk into a hotel room or an Airbnb without scanning every corner, without staring too long at the smoke detector, the alarm clock, the tiny black dot on the TV. I can't shower without wondering if someone's watching. That sense of safety I used to take for granted is gone, replaced by a constant hum of paranoia. And sometimes, late at night, when I think about that weekend, about the red light blinking from the bookshelf, a question claws its way to the surface and keeps me awake. What if I hadn't noticed? What if I had spent the whole weekend there, blissfully unaware, undressing, showering, moving around, speaking to myself, thinking I was alone? The thought is like ice down my spine. It's not just embarrassment. It's the realization that someone out there could have taken those private moments and turned them into something grotesque, something public, something I'd never be able to undo. At the gas station, after the police had left with the cameras bagged as evidence, I sat in my car for almost an hour. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I couldn't bring myself to drive home yet. I just stared straight ahead, the fluorescent lights of the gas station buzzing above me, a strange hollow ringing in my ears. It was like my body hadn't caught up with what my brain already knew, that I had narrowly escaped something I still didn't fully understand. Eventually, I drove to a small chain motel on the edge of town, the kind with faded carpet and a flickering sign. Didn't matter what it looked like. I just needed somewhere, anywhere, that felt safe. The man at the front desk must have seen something in my face because he gave me a room without asking many questions. I thanked him, went inside, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. I didn't even unpack. I just sat there listening to my own breathing, every little sound from the hallway making me flinch. When I finally forced myself to sleep, it wasn't real sleep. It was that shallow, restless doze where your body lies down but your mind stays awake, waiting for something to happen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blinking red light. Every time I turned my head, I thought I caught movement in the shadows. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't rested at all. My phone was full of missed calls and messages from an unknown number. No voicemail, just calls. Over and over throughout the night. I hadn't even noticed the vibrations. My stomach dropped. I didn't answer, of course, but the idea that someone was trying to reach me, someone who had my number, was almost worse than the cameras. I called the police station for an update. They told me they were working with Airbnb to trace the host, that they had already shut down his listing and flagged his account. But he was gone. No trace of him in the town, no forwarding address, no bank account they could freeze yet. It was like he had never existed except for that house full of hidden cameras. I decided to leave the town that morning. I packed up my few things, thanked the motel clerk, and got on the highway heading back toward home. But the farther I drove, the less the relief came. Instead, a new fear took its place. What if he had already uploaded the footage? What if it was out there, hidden on some forum, some dark corner of the internet? I tried not to think about it, but the thought crept in like smoke under a door. Halfway through my drive, I stopped at another gas station to fill up. When I went inside to pay, I caught a man at one of the booths looking at me a second too long. He had a phone in his hand, angled slightly toward me like he might be taking a picture. When our eyes met, he looked away quickly. My heart started pounding again. I left the store without my change, got back into my car and locked the doors. From then on, every car behind me on the highway felt like it could be him. Every time someone switched lanes and ended up behind me, my throat went dry. I kept checking my mirrors, speeding up, slowing down, trying to shake the feeling of being followed. It wasn't rational maybe, but nothing about this felt rational anymore. When I got home, the first thing I did was call a friend, someone I hadn't told anything to yet, and ask if I could crash at her place for a few days. I couldn't face my own apartment. I couldn't face being alone. She didn't ask questions, just said yes. At her place, surrounded by familiar things, I finally told her what had happened. As I spoke, I realized how surreal it sounded. A hidden camera in an Airbnb. The host vanishing. Unknown numbers calling me through the night. It sounded like a plot from a thriller movie. But it wasn't. It was real. She listened wide-eyed and then said something that chilled me even more. "What if you didn't find all of them?" she asked. "What if there was one in your bag or your car?" The thought made my stomach lurch. I tore through my bag right there on her living room floor. My clothes, my charger, my makeup bag. Everything came out. Nothing. But still, the paranoia didn't leave. It clung to me like a second skin. Over the next few days, I kept getting those calls. Unknown number. No voice MA. I blocked it and then another number started. Block that one. It was endless. The police said they were still investigating, but they couldn't give me details. They told me not to answer any calls I didn't recognize. That only made me feel more helpless. One evening, about a week later, I was sitting at my friend's kitchen table scrolling through my email when a new message popped up. No subject line, just a link. No text, no explanation. My heart dropped. I didn't click it, but the implication was enough to make me feel sick. Was this him? Was he taunting me? I forwarded the email to the police, who told me they'd add it to the case. They said not to open any attachments or links. But that didn't help me sleep at night. I started thinking about changing my phone number, deleting my email, wiping my entire online presence. But what if that didn't stop him? The worst part was the waiting. The silence between calls. The days going by with no update. Every moment felt like a countdown to something I couldn't see. I stopped going out unless I had to. Stopped answering my phone. Stopped sleeping more than a few hours at a time. Then one night, I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, scrolling through my phone when I saw a man in the rearview mirror. Just standing there at the edge of the lot, watching. My chest tightened. He didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood there staring in my direction. I started my car, but my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. When I looked back again, he was gone. I don't know if it was him or just some stranger. I don't know if the calls were him or if I was spiraling into paranoia. All I know is that something shifted in me after that Airbnb. I don't see the world the same way anymore. Every space feels compromised. Every stranger feels like a threat. Even now, as I sit here writing this, my phone buzzes on the table. Unknown number. No voicemail. I don't answer. I never answer. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he's still out there watching me through some unseen camera, waiting for the moment I finally let my guard down. Sometimes when the phone buzzes, it's almost like I can feel eyes on me even if I'm completely alone. I'll glance up at the ceiling corners, at the tiny holes in my smoke detector, at the green light of my laptop camera. Rationally, I know it's probably just the trauma replaying itself, but the sensation is so strong it makes my stomach twist. It's not like I asked to live like this. Before that weekend, I never thought about hidden lenses or listening devices. I'd book places on Airbnb and hotels without a second thought, wander into gas stations at midnight without scanning the parking lot. Now everything is different. It's been weeks since I left that house, but the police investigation has been crawling along. They did manage to pull some data from one of the cameras. Apparently, they were all connected to a local Wi-Fi network which was then routed through a VPN. They're trying to trace it back, but it's like chasing smoke. Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. The house itself was leased under a shell company. The bank account Airbnb had on file had already been closed. Even the name attached to the listing turned out to be fake. What keeps me up at night isn't just the thought of someone watching me, but the realization that I was probably not the first. There were other guests. Other women. Maybe families with kids. Maybe couples. People who left glowing reviews because they didn't notice anything. Did the footage of them end up somewhere too? Did they ever find out? I've been staying with my friend for over a month now. I pay her rent money and try to stay out of her way, but even she's starting to look at me with that concerned expression, the one people get when they don't know how to help. I can tell she thinks I'm spiraling. Maybe she's right. I check my car every morning before driving it. I run my hands along the dashboard, under the seats, feeling for anything that shouldn't be there. I've bought 2 different bug detectors off Amazon and sweep my room every night before I go to bed. I haven't found anything, but it doesn't calm me. A few days ago I got another email. This one had a subject line, "Nice dress." That's it. Inside was just one sentence: "You looked good last night." No name, no signature, just that. I hadn't gone anywhere special the night before. Just a late walk to clear my head, wearing an old hoodie over a sundress because the air was humid. Nobody was around. At least I thought nobody was around. I took the email to the police. They told me again to stay somewhere safe, to avoid going out alone, to not respond to anything. But their faces told me everything. They still had no idea who this was. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat up in my friend's living room with all the lights on, the curtains drawn, holding my phone in my lap like a lifeline. Every sound outside, the hum of a car, the bark of a dog, a door closing somewhere, made my muscles tense. Around 3 in the morning the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time though there was a voicemail. It was just breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Not a pocket dial, not background noise. Someone holding the phone up and exhaling into it. After about 20 seconds they whispered, so soft I almost didn't catch it, "Found you." Then the line went dead. I called 911 right then, shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. They sent a patrol car, but by the time the officers arrived, whoever had been out there, if anyone had been, was gone. They searched the street, checked the yard, nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. They said it was probably a prank. But I knew. In my gut, I knew it wasn't a prank. The next morning I convinced my friend to take me to a different city. We packed up what little I had with me, left before sunrise, and drove 3 hours away to her cousin's apartment. The cousin didn't know the whole story, she just thought we needed a place to crash for a few nights. I didn't care. I just wanted to put distance between me and whatever had followed me from that Airbnb. For the first 2 nights, it felt almost normal again. I slept without the lights on. I didn't jump at every sound. I almost believed maybe the calls had stopped. But on the 3rd night, as I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I caught a flicker of red in the mirror. Just a pinprick, like the tiniest reflection of light from something behind me. I spun around, heart racing. Nothing. I checked the walls, the vents, the corners of the ceiling. Nothing. I ran the bug detector over every inch of the bathroom. Nothing. Still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I've stopped telling people everything that happens. They start to look at you differently, like you're imagining things, like you're fragile. But deep down, I know I'm not imagining it. Because no matter where I go, the calls follow. The emails follow. The feeling of eyes on me follows. Sometimes I think about going to the media, telling my story, warning people. But then I think about the email, "Nice dress," and the voicemail, "Found you," and I freeze. What if going public makes it worse? What if it's exactly what he wants? I've started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. I know it's ridiculous, but it's the only thing that makes me feel like I have some control. I dream about the house sometimes. In the dreams, I'm back there walking from room to room, but instead of finding the cameras, I find doors that weren't there before. Hallways that lead to nowhere. And behind every door, a man's voice breathing, whispering my name. Then I wake up and the phone is buzzing again. One night, after another voicemail full of breathing, I snapped. I threw the phone against the wall so hard it shattered. For a few seconds I felt relief. Pure silence, no buzzing, no calls. But then my friend's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at me, pale, and didn't answer. The next morning there was an envelope under the apartment door. No address, no postage. Inside was a printed photograph of me sitting in the car at that gas station weeks ago, my head turned, eyes wide like I'd already sensed someone watching me. On the back, in neat handwriting, "Smile." That was when I realized I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep hiding in borrowed rooms, waiting for the next call, the next message, the next envelope. Whoever this was, they weren't just some random creep with cameras. They were mobile. They were close. And they weren't going to stop. I don't know what I'm going to do next. All I know is that I can't let this keep happening. Because each time the phone buzzes, each time the red light flickers, each time I feel that crawling sensation on the back of my neck, I get a little closer to the edge. And one day, if I don't do something, there won't be an edge left. Sometimes when I finally drift off, I have a different dream. In it, I'm back in the Airbnb, but this time I don't leave. This time I stay long enough to see who comes through the door. I wake up before I can see his face. But I think I'm getting closer. And now, even as I sit here writing this, there's a knock at the door. I freeze when I hear it. It's not a polite knock. It's soft, deliberate, two slow thuds like someone testing whether I'm inside. My heart lurches into my throat. My friend isn't home, she went out to get groceries an hour ago. So whoever's on the other side of that door isn't supposed to be here. I grab the knife from under the pillow, the one I've been sleeping with for weeks, and inch toward the living room. Every step silent, even though my pulse is hammering so loudly it feels like the whole apartment must hear it. Another knock. Same rhythm. Then silence. I can see the door from the edge of the hallway but not the peephole. My mouth is dry, my palms slick on the handle of the knife. My instinct screams at me not to go near it, but the not knowing is worse. My fingers tremble as I reach for my phone. Even though the screen is shattered, I can still dial 911. My thumb hovers over the call button, but then a voice comes muffled through the door. Delivery. It's a man's voice. Low neutral. I didn't order anything. My friend didn't either, not that I know of. My mind races. Is it really a delivery guy? Could the person following me be bold enough to try this now? The voice calls again, slightly louder. Package for you. I force myself to breathe through my nose. My heart's going so fast it feels like my ribs are shaking. I don't answer. I don't move. After a long moment, the voice calls once more, but this time there's something different in the tone. It's not neutral anymore. It's sharper, annoyed. I know you're in there. My stomach turns to ice. I step back from the door, knife still in hand, and finally press call. The dispatcher answers, calm, practiced. I whisper into the phone that someone's at the door, that I'm alone, that I'm scared. She tells me to stay where I am, to lock myself in a room if possible, that officers are on the way. I back into the bedroom, shut the door softly, and press my back against it. The knife feels heavy, awkward in my grip. Through the walls, I hear the faint sound of the front door handle jiggling. Not hard, just testing. Like whoever's out there wants to see if it's locked. The dispatcher is still on the line, telling me to stay calm, telling me help is coming. I can barely respond. My throat feels like it's closing. The handle jiggling stops. Silence. Then footsteps, slow and measured, moving away from the door. For a second I think maybe it's over. Maybe he's gone. But then from the other side of the apartment, I hear the faint creak of a window sliding. My heart slams against my ribs. I whisper into the phone that someone's trying to come in. The dispatcher's voice sharpens, she's sending officers faster now. She tells me to barricade myself if I can. I drop the phone onto the bed, grab the small dresser with my free hand, and drag it toward the door, the wood scraping against the carpet. My arms shake with the effort, but adrenaline makes me stronger than I think. I wedge the dresser against the doorknob just as a sound comes from the living room. A soft thud like someone stepping onto the floor after climbing in. I crouch down beside the bed, clutching the knife so hard my knuckles ache. My breathing is shallow, almost silent. The apartment feels impossibly small now, every sound magnified. I hear the faint rustle of fabric, the creak of another floorboard. He's inside. I squeeze my eyes shut, listening, trying to track where he is. The steps are slow, deliberate, moving down the hallway. He's not rushing. He thinks he has time. I want to scream, but I don't. I want to call out for my friend, but I know she's not here. Instead, I press my hand over my mouth and wait. The footsteps stop just outside the bedroom door. I can see the shadow under the crack, a faint line of darkness that shifts as he moves. The knob turns once, twice, but the dresser holds. Silence again. Then a voice, soft, right against the door. You don't have to be scared. It's the same voice from the voicemail. I press myself harder against the floor, shaking all over. The knife trembles in my hand. The dispatcher is still on the line. I can hear her faintly calling my name from the bed, but I don't dare move to grab the phone. Another slow turn of the knob. Another pause. Then a low chuckle. "You looked so peaceful sleeping." My stomach flips. That's exactly what he whispered on the voicemail weeks ago. Then, distant outside, the sound of sirens. The shadow under the door shifts quickly. Footsteps retreat faster now, moving down the hallway back toward the living room. A window creaks again. Then nothing. I don't move for a full minute, barely even breathe. The sirens get louder, closer. Finally, someone pounds on the front door, shouting, "Police." I shove the dresser aside, fling the door open, and run out with the knife still in my hand. 2 officers stand there, guns drawn, eyes scanning the room. They shout for me to drop the knife. I do, sobbing, pointing toward the window. They fan out, checking every room. The window is open, curtain fluttering in the night air. He's gone again. One officer kneels beside me, trying to calm me down, but I can barely hear him over the ringing in my ears. All I can think is that he was here. He was inches from me. And still he got away. Later, when they take my statement, they find no fingerprints, no footprints outside. Just the open window. Another ghost slipped through their fingers. But I know now, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that whoever he is, he's not done. He's patient. He's careful. And he's closer than anyone realizes. That night, sitting in the back of a police car wrapped in a blanket, I make a decision. I can't keep running and hiding, waiting for him to make the next move. I have to find out who he is. Because if I don't, one day I won't get away in time. Even now, writing this, I feel him out there somewhere, watching, waiting for me to slip. But for the first time in weeks, my fear is mixed with something else. Resolve. I didn't go back to my friend's apartment after that night. The police helped me relocate to a hotel under a different name in another county while they worked the case. For days, my nerves stayed frayed like wires. But instead of shrinking into the fear, I started working with the detectives, showing them every email, every voicemail, every detail of the Airbnb listing. It became less about hiding and more about fighting back. Eventually, with the data from the cameras and the delivery van footage from a nearby convenience store, they caught a break. The man who had been stalking me had used a delivery company as cover to move equipment into the house. A clerk remembered his face. A few days later, they picked him up in a motel 2 towns over. In his car, they found hard drives, camera parts, and hundreds of hours of footage from different rentals. Mine was just one of many. The day they called to tell me he was in custody, I sat down on the edge of the bed and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Air filling my lungs without tightness. Relief. It didn't erase the nights of panic, the voicemails, the knocks at the door. But it meant it was over. I gave my statement in court later. I never saw him directly, only on a grainy screen when the evidence was shown, but just seeing the footage made my hands shake. Yet there was a strange power in facing it. The judge denied him bail. He'll be tried on multiple counts of unlawful surveillance, stalking, and harassment. Even now, I still check corners when I walk into a room. I still sweep for cameras in hotels. That part of me probably won't ever go away. But the difference now is that the man behind the blinking red light isn't out there anymore. He can't knock on my door. He can't whisper through the phone. On the day I moved back into my own apartment, I stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping in. The space felt unfamiliar and familiar all at once. When I finally closed the door behind me, I locked it twice out of habit. But for the first time, the lock felt like it meant something. And in that quiet, I realized I'd survived. Not just the cameras. Not just the stalking. The feeling of being turned into an object, stripped of safety. I had survived him. That night I slept in my own bed. No knife under the pillow. No lights on. Just the sound of my own breathing, steady and calm in the dark. For the first time since that Airbnb, I wasn't waiting for a knock at the door. I was finally home.